Title: The Cold Geometry. Chapter 1. The Glow Behind the Ridge. Trevor Lennox didn't like being called 50. It sounded too final. But there he was, boots crunching against ice, breath fogging in the last light of day, hiking up a logging trail west of Fernie with a flashlight and a satchel full of regrets. The email had been short. No name. No subject line. Just coordinates and a single sentence. They came back. It's happening again. Trevor hadn't planned to follow up. He had a speaking gig in Victoria. A deadline. An actual vacation booked, for once. But something in that sentence scratched at the part of his brain that fiction couldn't quiet. The again was what did it. He reached the ridge just as the sky went from dusk to that bruised metallic purple that only shows up before a storm, or after something unnatural. Down in the valley below, past a frozen creek and a cluster of abandoned sheds, was a faint glow. Pale green. Unmoving. Wrong. Trevor scanned the sky. No aircraft. No noise. Just the glow. He exhaled slowly and muttered to himself, "Of course. Because normal would be boring." He double-checked his recorder, tightened his gloves, and started down toward the light. As he descended, the glow seemed to pulse, not with heat or motion, but with intention. Like it knew he was coming. And it was waiting. Chapter 2. The Shape in the Ice. Trevor's boots crunched into the edge of the clearing, the snow there strangely untouched. No tracks, no melt, no sign of wildlife. Just stillness. The glow came from a patch of ice just beyond the largest shed. Its boards sagged inward like the whole structure was holding its breath. He ignored it and focused on the thing in the snow. A shape, half exposed beneath a thin sheen of ice. Sharp. Geometric. Definitely not natural. It wasn't raised like it had been placed there. It was cut in, as though the ice had formed around it. Trevor dropped to one knee, brushing frost away with the edge of his glove. The design was symmetrical, but off, like someone had taken a perfect triangle and twisted one corner in a direction that didn't quite exist. He reached for his phone. Snapped a photo. The screen glitched for a split second. He took another. Same result. He muttered, "Of course it doesn't want to be documented." The glow flickered. Then intensified. Not brighter. Deeper. Like the color itself had grown heavier. That's when he heard it. A soft humming, so low it felt more like a pressure in his chest than a sound in the air. Trevor stood slowly, every instinct telling him not to turn around. But he did. Behind him, the shed door was wide open, and there was a single handprint, blackened into the frost-covered wood. Too large to be his. Too fresh to be old. Trevor took one step back, and the glow vanished. Just like that. Darkness swallowed the clearing. And somewhere behind the trees, something exhaled. Chapter 3. The Spiral Burn. The air inside the shed was colder than outside. That shouldn't have been possible. Trevor's flashlight swept slowly across the interior. Frost-covered tools hung from rusted nails, an overturned wheelbarrow in the corner, and what looked like the gnawed remains of a deer's leg, half buried in straw. But the floor is what stopped him. Dead center, scorched into the planks, was a spiral. Roughly 2 feet wide, its edges burned into the wood as if by something superheated, but the surrounding boards were untouched. No signs of ignition. No soot. Just a clean, blackened spiral that hadn't burned through, but into. He stepped closer. The pattern matched nothing in human design. It wasn't religious. It wasn't decorative. It felt functional. He crouched, careful not to touch it, and held the flashlight steady. The beam caught something else, tiny flecks embedded in the burn. Not ash. Metal. He reached into his satchel, pulled out a sample jar, and used a knife to collect some of the fragments. They shimmered faintly, somewhere between silver and something more iridescent, like insect wing. Trevor stood, unease tightening around his chest. He'd seen things before. Enough to know this wasn't the kind of weird that could be written off as natural. Then came a sound behind him. Not outside. Inside. A slow drag, something soft pulling through loose straw. Trevor turned his flashlight. Nothing. He scanned the corner again. Still nothing. But the spiral. It had changed. Ever so slightly. Now there were 3 dots added to the edge of the symbol, like the beginning of a sentence. Trevor slowly backed toward the door. And somewhere behind him, something exhaled again. Closer this time. Chapter 4. The Watchers. Trevor stumbled out of the shed, boots slipping in the powdery snow, heart thudding louder than the silence around him. The door creaked shut behind him, not slammed, not blown by wind. Just closed. Gently. Deliberately. He turned. The clearing was bathed in pale moonlight now, but not natural moonlight. The snow sparkled too much. The shadows stretched too long. The cold felt aware. Then he saw them, just beyond the trees. Small orbs, faint glows suspended between the branches. No pattern. No movement. They didn't flicker like fireflies or sweep like searchlights. They hovered. Silent. Watching. He counted 7. Then 10. Then stopped counting, because the moment he tried, the lights seemed to shift. Like they were responding to his attention. Trevor reached for his recorder. The moment his fingers touched it, the lights pulsed. Once. Together. He froze. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Somehow he knew, these things weren't just watching him. They were measuring him. A sound cracked in the distance, dry wood snapping like a rifle shot. One of the lights vanished. Then another. Trevor took a step back toward the trail. The lights didn't follow. They didn't need to. He turned and walked. Not fast. Not slow. The kind of pace you use when you think you're being followed by something that doesn't need to hurry. Behind him, the lights held their place. But he could feel it in his spine. They were waiting for him to come back. And next time, they might not stay in the trees. Chapter 5. The Fog That Knows. Trevor slammed the truck door shut and locked it without thinking. He sat in the driver's seat, panting, watching his own breath fog the windshield from the inside. His hands were shaking, not from the cold, he'd been colder, but from something deeper. Primal. The dashboard lights gave off a sickly orange glow, casting his face in tired shadow. His recorder was still rolling on the passenger seat, half buried under a stack of disorganized notes and an empty thermos. He didn't reach for it. He didn't move at all. Because something was outside. The fog had crept in thick, curling around the edges of the windshield like fingers. He wiped a circle clear with his glove. At first, nothing. Then, shapes. Faint. Unclear. Not quite human. Not quite not. Like silhouettes remembered from a nightmare. Too tall. Too narrow. One with an angle where a shoulder shouldn't be. He blinked. They didn't move. He turned the key halfway, just to power the heater. The figures didn't flinch. Didn't react. He switched on the high beams. Gone. No sound. No movement. Just a gone. But the pressure in his chest remained. Like the air hadn't gone back to normal. Like the truck was still being watched, from inside now. He reached for the recorder. Hit stop. Then hit record again. Spoke clearly, though his voice trembled. February 12th, 10:24 p.m. Ridge Valley incident escalating. Encountered symbols. Entity interaction possible. Fog acting as cover or conduit. Shapes witnessed. Observation ongoing. Subject likely not alone. He clicked the recorder off. Then reached for the gear shift. It wouldn't move. Trevor stared at it. Then slowly looked up. In the rearview mirror, just for a moment, he saw something in the back seat. But when he turned around, nothing. Just cold. Chapter 6. Station 0. The gas station appeared like a mirage. Trevor hadn't remembered passing it on the way in, but there it was, half-lit by a flickering neon sign that buzzed like it had a secret. One pump. One ancient building. One open sign that didn't quite know if it should be glowing or not. He pulled in, truck steaming in the cold, and stepped inside. It smelled like dust and decades. Behind the counter stood a woman in her late 60s, wrapped in layers that looked older than the building. Her eyes were sharp. Her posture sharper. Trevor gave a cautious nod. She didn't return it. "Need anything?" she asked, voice flat. "Coffee. Maybe directions," he said, brushing snow from his coat. "You lost." "Maybe." She didn't blink. People only come through here when they're running from something. Or toward it. Trevor looked around. The shelves hadn't been stocked in weeks. The radio on the counter was off, but he swore it had just been playing as he walked in. Something about the air felt paused. He placed a few bucks on the counter. "Anything warm?" She poured him a coffee. Didn't ask how he liked it. Then, without warning, she asked, "You see the lights?" He froze mid-sip. "What?" "The orbs. In the trees. They come before the noise. Always have." Trevor looked at her. "You've seen them?" She didn't answer. Just tilted her head toward the window. He turned. Drawn into the frost on the glass, barely visible, was the same spiral from the shed. His spine tightened. "I didn't draw that," he muttered. "I know," she said. Her hand was still under the counter. "But they did." Trevor stepped back. She leaned forward, eyes locked with his. "Be careful who you tell, Mr. Lennox. Not everyone who watches you wants you to stop." Chapter 7. The Road That Shifted. Trevor shouldn't have been driving. The road was barely visible, snow cascading in wild horizontal slashes across his headlights. The truck heater wheezed, barely keeping the frost off the inside of the windshield. But he had to get out of there. The gas station. The symbol. The woman's words. "Be careful who you tell." He was still thinking about that when it happened. One curve, and then it was there. Standing in the middle of the road. A figure. Tall. Thin. Humanoid, but off. The proportions were wrong. Limbs too long. Head too still. And no face. Just smooth, matte skin catching the light like stone under moonlight. Trevor's hands gripped the wheel. Too late to swerve. Too fast to brake. He braced for impact. The headlights washed over the figure. And it vanished. Not moved. Not hit. Gone. The truck swerved, tires skidding across packed snow. Trevor fought the wheel, heart hammering, every muscle in his arms locked with tension. He pulled the vehicle to a stop sideways on the road, steam hissing from under the hood. Panting. Waiting. Outside, nothing but the whisper of snowfall. Trevor leaned his forehead against the steering wheel, trying to slow his breath. Then something tapped the window. Not hard. Just enough to say, "I'm still here." He didn't look. Didn't move. Because whatever had appeared on that road wasn't a creature. It was a warning. Chapter 8. What Passed Through. Trevor didn't remember falling asleep. But he woke up slumped over the steering wheel, cold but alive, the sky outside shifting from black to bruised orange. Barely. He stepped out into the hush of early morning, snow crunching under his boots. The truck's engine was cold. No memory of turning it off. That's when he saw the prints. They started by the passenger door, like something had walked right up to the truck, and then veered off into the trees. Long, narrow. Deep. Wrong. Not animal. Not human. 3 toes. Clawed, but lightly. No signs of dragging. The gait was confident, purposeful. It didn't stumble in the storm. It moved through it. Trevor crouched to photograph them. The prints weren't melted like heat had done it. The snow around them was crystallized. like something had leached the energy out of it as it passed. He followed the trail a few paces. The trees were still, unnaturally so. Even the birds weren't daring to sing. And at the tree line, just where the fog thickened, he found it. A second spiral, drawn directly into the frost-covered bark of a pine tree. Same geometry as the one at the shed. Same orientation. But below it, scratched in with something sharper than a knife, was a phrase. English. 4 words. This is the third. Trevor stepped back. What was the first? And when did the second happen? He turned toward the road, heart hammering. Something was escalating. And he wasn't sure whether he was tracking it, or being herded toward the next piece. Chapter 9. The Silence Between Frequencies. The Ranger outpost wasn't supposed to be occupied this time of year. Trevor had found it on an old forestry map, half lost in a margin note, a blip left behind by someone who probably didn't know it still stood. But it did. Tucked into the tree line, just high enough to catch radio signals, just remote enough that no one would hear him scream. He lit the stove, got the radio online, and patched into the emergency frequency. Static for a full minute. Then a faint voice from somewhere in the Kootenays. Who is this? Trevor leaned in. Trevor Lennox. Civilian. Former propulsion researcher. I'm reporting an anomalous site near Mt. Hosmer. Possibly multiple incidents. I've encountered traces. Symbols. Life forms. Maybe. Not human. The voice crackled. Hesitated. Then. Are you alone? Trevor glanced at the window. The fog outside had thickened. Shapes moved, but not like animals. Too fluid. Too slow. Not for long, he said. Say again. Trevor lowered his voice. I need to know if anyone else has reported geometric burn patterns. Spiral formations. Vanishing lights. You know the kind. There was a long silence. Then the voice came back. You need to leave that area. Shut down all signal-emitting devices. They listen. Through frequency bleed. Trevor's heart slowed. Not out of calm, out of cold. The kind that came from knowing you weren't paranoid. You were late to the party. I can't leave, he said. They're escalating. And someone, something, is tracking what I find. Possibly guiding it. Then you're already part of it, the voice replied. You've been flagged. And then the line cut. Just static. Trevor turned slowly to the window. One of the silhouettes had stopped. It hadn't walked up. It had phased in. Like it had always been there, and he was just now allowed to notice it. Chapter 10. No Way Back. The outpost was silent. The fire had burned low in the stove. The air inside was still, brittle, like a held breath. Trevor stood near the window, flashlight in hand, watching the fog roll in again, this time thicker, heavier, purposeful. He wiped a circle clear in the frost with his sleeve. At first, nothing. Then, movement. A tall figure stepped through the mist, slow and deliberate. Its outline shimmered like heat over asphalt, but colder. Like it wasn't fully here yet. It stood just past the tree line, facing the outpost. Watching. Trevor turned off the flashlight. The glow from the fire behind him created just enough backlight to catch something else. The snow. Tracks. Leading up to the door. Long, angular. Spaced wrong. Like something with a different center of gravity had walked. No, glided, right up to the porch. No return path. Whatever left those tracks hadn't gone back into the woods. Trevor moved quickly but quietly, checking the back door, securing the lock. He found a hunting knife in a drawer under the desk. Old, rusted, but solid. He didn't like the idea of needing it. But he liked the idea of not having it even less. The radio crackled once, then died. Not static. Not power failure. Silence. A different kind of interference. Outside, the fog pulsed, like it was breathing. expanding, contracting. The figure was closer now. It hadn't moved, but it was closer. Trevor backed away from the window. He wasn't sure if he was being studied or summoned, but he was starting to understand something very clearly. This wasn't an isolated event. This was an escalation. And it wasn't just him in the crosshairs anymore. Chapter 11. The Light in the Hall. The outpost lost power without warning. No flicker. No surge. Just darkness. Trevor stood still for a moment, letting his eyes adjust. Then he flipped on his flashlight. The hallway stretched before him, warped by flickering shadows. Each knot in the old would now a potential eye. The only sound was the creak of the building settling, or shifting. He moved slowly, 1 foot at a time, the light catching dust drifting through the air like static. At the end of the hall, one door stood ajar. It hadn't been open earlier. From the gap, a faint green glow spilled into the darkness, dim, sickly, pulsing like it had a heartbeat. Trevor knew that glow. He'd seen it at the clearing, under the ice, in the bark. He raised the flashlight to the door, but the beam faltered, dimmed. He took a breath and moved forward. Behind him, the faintest sound, the creak of floorboards under a weight that wasn't his. He spun. Nothing. Just long shadows. But one of them stretched the wrong way. Not cast by the light. Not aligned with his beam. It lingered for a second too long before slipping out of view, like it realized it had been seen. Trevor turned back toward the glowing door. He reached it, hesitated, then pushed it open. Inside was the radio equipment room. Everything was powered down, except one device. A small, unfamiliar black box sat where the emergency receiver had been. Wires coiled around it like roots, or veins. And above it, scratched into the wall, was the symbol again. But it wasn't just a spiral anymore. It was a spiral within a spiral, a recursion, an invitation, or a command. And beneath it, scrawled in tight block lettering, 4th stage initiated. Trevor took a step back, and the green light went out. Chapter 12. The Ashes of Contact. By the time the first light of dawn reached the treetops, the outpost was gone. Not leveled. Not burned in any conventional way. Hollowed. The walls were blackened from the inside out, like something had reached into the structure and pulled its purpose apart. The roof had collapsed inward, not from fire, but from something deeper. Something that didn't need heat to destroy. Trevor stood a safe distance away, his jacket dusted in new snow. His boots didn't move. Neither did his eyes. Around the smoldering shell of the cabin, the snow was marked, not by footprints, but by impressions. Geometric. Perfectly spaced. Hexes. Spirals. Lines that stopped mid-curve like unfinished thoughts. Trevor didn't dare step closer. Not yet. He pulled out his recorder and clicked it on. Outpost is compromised. Power loss preceded by direct interaction. Hostile. Unclear. Purpose. Deliberate. 4th stage confirmed. Structure reduced. Not destroyed. Altered. He paused. Then added, quieter. I don't think they're trying to scare me. I think they're trying to teach me something. And I'm not sure I want to learn it. He clicked it off. Then noticed them. Figures. Far off. Beyond the clearing. Still as stone, but unmistakable. Watching. Not hiding. Waiting. Trevor didn't raise his voice. Didn't move. He just looked back at them and whispered to himself, "So what happens in stage 5? He didn't expect an answer. But in the wind, he swore he heard one word echo through the pines. Remember. Chapter 13. The Spiral Monument. Trevor had never been this high up without a chopper. The trail wasn't marked on any map. He'd found it in a margin note inside one of Carter's old research journals, a half-erased reference to an anomalous formation at altitude. No coordinates. Just a rough sketch and the word, resonance. Now, standing knee-deep in snow, the wind clawing at his coat, Trevor saw it. The spiral wasn't carved into the mountainside. It was the mountain. A natural outcropping twisted into an impossible form, as if tectonic forces had been coerced into geometry. The stone had age. Wait. And symbols, some like the ones he'd seen in the shed, others older. Worn smooth. Like they'd been there before language. He pulled out his journal and began sketching. Recording. Thinking aloud. This is it. Not just a marker. Not just a location. It's a memory. A recording, etched in stone. I think it's how they track the stages. Or maybe, how they choose who sees them. The wind shifted, and the snow at the base of the outcropping thinned, revealing something metallic. Trevor crouched. Half buried in frost was an object, small, octagonal, fused with the rock. Not embedded, grown into it. Like it had been there long before the mountain had formed. It pulsed. Just once. A faint throb, barely perceptible, but it ran up his fingers and into his chest like an echo he'd forgotten how to feel. He staggered back. He didn't know what it was yet. But he knew it wasn't passive. It was awake. And it had recognized him. Chapter 14. The Sky That Speaks. The wind had gone silent. Not still, silent. Like the world had been muted. Trevor stood beneath the spiral monument, its faint glow casting strange shadows over the snow. The metallic object embedded in the stone pulsed again, sending a slow wave through the rock that trembled under his boots. He looked up, and the sky had changed. Not a cloud. Not a storm. The stars themselves were moving, bending. They twisted into arcs and curves, forming symbols, glyphs, geometric constellations that matched the ones in his journal. The ones from the shed, the lake, the cabin wall. Trevor's breath caught. This wasn't light distortion. This wasn't a trick of atmosphere. It was a message. No, a mirror. The sky was responding to what had been marked on Earth. Or perhaps Earth had always been responding to it. He whispered, "You're not just above us. You're inside this." He felt it then, not fear, not awe. Recognition. A thought, not his own, pressed into the space behind his eyes. "You are the fifth." He staggered. The fifth. He'd found 3 locations. The outpost was the 4th. This mountain, this monument, it was him. His presence here had completed something. The spiral wasn't just a pattern. It was a map, a machine, a countdown. And the sky was no longer a passive backdrop. It was watching back. Chapter 15. The Fifth Pattern. The sunrise came without warmth. Trevor stood at the edge of the ridge, boots planted in snow, journal clutched in one hand, the weight of it now more than pages. Behind him, the spiral monument had gone quiet, just rock again, half lost to frost. But the symbols still shimmered faintly in the cracks, like old light trying to remember its purpose. Below, the valley stretched out in perfect silence. It should have been ordinary. But it wasn't. Across the frozen expanse, frost had etched delicate spirals, hundreds, spread like constellations on the land itself. They weren't random. They weren't chaotic. They were complete. Trevor exhaled slowly. Everything made sense now. Terribly, beautifully, inescapably. It hadn't been about what he saw. It had been about what he was becoming. The 5th wasn't a location. It was him. He'd been marked, witnessed, transformed. His journal, once fiction, was now prophecy. A transmission he hadn't known he was receiving. Or sending. Far below, a figure stood in the snow. Watching. Alone. No movement. Not threatening. Just waiting. Trevor didn't wave. Didn't call out. He simply nodded. Because this was no longer about warning people. or escaping it. It was about carrying it forward. The spiral didn't end here. It just tightened.